Hello again, Strekwop. There's only a week left until we can play Diablo 4, and here I am with my 24th ready for launch build, which is Shadow Trapper 2.0, a rogue setup. It's better, it's improved, and it has information about the skill trees, the unique gear, the legendary aspects, the sockets and gems, the gear rows, and the Paragon Boards. Some of you might be wondering why going with the Shadow Imbue with Trapper build. Why not Poison, the more obvious synergy? And they might be right. It is the more obvious synergy, but Shadow has the Alchemist synergy. There are Alchemist aspects that let us trigger certain effects when we are doing poison damage to shadow and where we're using when we're using shadow imbue to poisoned enemies, and we're also when we're also doing shadow imbue damage to chilled enemies, and I'm using both of those. Normally I don't use the chill on the Caltrops. This time I'm using it just for the sake of the icy alchemist aspect. So it's a very interesting setup, and I think it's fun. It's definitely fun considering Flurry is one of my favorite skills, and so is Shadow Trap. This build will be one of my favorite ones to play when I do get to leveling up the Rogue. So I hope you enjoyed this setup. Buckle up and let's go. This is what we've got. We're using Invigorating Strike, we're using Flurry, then we're using Caltrops, Poison Trap, Shadow Imbuement, and Death Trap. Death Trap together with Exposure as the key passive. This is up close the images of the skills if you were wondering what they look like. The build calculator I used, Watrix build calculator, has been updated. So now it has the images as well. But it's easier for me if I use this one on my spreadsheet so you can see all of that stuff back to back next to each other. So for invigorating, obviously enhancing, and the two upgrades I prefer fundamental. So hitting an enemy while below 50% energy makes them vulnerable. But that's not enough, so we do want improved Flurry for more vulnerable application. If Flurry hits any vulnerable enemy, it will make all enemies hit by that cast vulnerable for 3 seconds. Then for Caltrops, as I mentioned, methodical Caltrops, it now deals cold damage and chills enemies for 20% per second. Very, very needed for this setup, for this build. We also use Sturdy from the core passives, but we don't go for siphoning. We also max out Weapon Mastery here, and Poison Trap is just a single pointer, just like Caltrops and Invigorating Strike. I put the point wrong here. So yeah, we're using countering, which is Poison Trap is 20% chance to reset your imbuement skill cooldowns when activated. You might understand why this one is better. Obviously, resetting the imbuement will keep us doing our think and triggering some legendary aspects, which right now I haven't shown them to you, but eventually later in the aspect segment you would see why. We want that shadow imbue as often as possible, and this one is better than this. Dealing 10% multiplicative damage won't be as good as having 20% chance to reset the cooldowns. Exploit and Malice, 3 points into each. Agile, that was the last remaining point in the build. And since we are taking certain things that depend on dodging in the Paragons, I put the last point here, but you might want to put actually 2 more points here. You might want to take 2 points from other places and put them here so you have more dodge chance, so you can trigger certain things after dodging, like damage after dodging an attack and stuff like that. Next, for the precision imbuement, definitely nice having those 3 points for 15 imbuement skills gain 15% increased crit strike chance, and shadow imbuement. Shadow imbuement with blended. So shadow imbues primary explosion makes enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds. More ways to make a vulnerable, always welcome. Shadow crush, we just want to put 1 point here. We can't afford more. And then we want to max out consuming shadows. Wow, as much as I would love this, to have points into frigid finesse, I just don't have the points to put it. But if I did have some extra points, I wouldn't mind maxing this one out. Death Trap, obviously with both upgrades and Innervation, Second Wind, and Alchemist's Fortune. All 3 of them maxed out at 3 points. And Trap Mastery maxed out at 3 points. Aftermath maxed out at 3 points. And Exposure is our key passive, which is amazing. Dealing direct damage to an enemy affected by a trap skill has up to 25% chance to reduce the active cooldowns of your trap skills, and that should count for the ultimate as well because it is a active skill. It is an active cooldown skill. Then drop a cluster of exploding stun grenades that deal 40% of their of total physical damage and stun enemies for 0.5 seconds. And for unique items, I've, as usual, picked 4 items, but the top priority one is the Condemnation Dagger, which, since it's a dagger, damage to close enemies, but it gives you this uniqueness here. Your core skills deal 20 to 40 increased damage, multiplicative, when spending 3 combo points. Your basic skills using this weapon have a 30% chance to generate 3 combo points. It also gives you basic attack speed, crit strike chance against injured enemies, damage with dual wielded weapons, and core skill damage. So the first one won't be affecting Flurry, but the next 3 bonuses will. And it's nice. It's definitely nice, and it's nice to have this extra bonus as well. It obviously means you should be using the combo points mechanic for a class mechanic. And yes, there are 3 more unique items, which are Ice in the Dark. I strongly recommend using that one as well, unless it hits boss or a player. Death Trap will continue to rearm itself until it kills an enemy. However, Death Trap's cooldown is increased by 15 to 30%. It gives you shout damage, dodge chance, damage to elites, very good, and damage to trapped enemies. Harlequin Crest, 2 ranks to all skills, amazing. Damage reduction, and most importantly, cooldown reduction, very good for this setup. Then we also have one of the best stats on this item, crafting material drop rate for Helltides. You'll be able to get certain crafting materials such as the Bloodfiend Rose from Helltides, and it only drops there, meaning you definitely want to use that during Helltide runs, even if you decide to use a different helmet. If you think something else fits better, like Andario's Visage, for example, this one you would definitely want to bring with you on Helltides. But just the 2 ranks to all skills by itself makes it worthy enough, let alone the cooldown and the crafting material drop rate. Then there's Mother's Embrace, which if a core skill hits 5 or more enemies, 20 to 40% of the resource cost is refunded. Since we're using the 360 Flurry, it's definitely gonna be happening when mobbing. Crit strike chance, crit strike damage, needless to say, amazing stats, even overpowered damage, mind you, and some core skill damage. The overpowered damage, we shouldn't lean too heavily on it, and we didn't when I took some Paragons, but the core skill damage will add up, and it's super solid. The amount of stats we can get for various things here that you can see on the site is immense. Now that you know which the unique items are, this next list will make more sense, the legendary aspects and powers list. In the helmet, you want to use Frostbitten aspect until a Harlequin Crest drops. After that, just replace them. As painless as possible is what I try to make the process of replacing an aspect with a unique item. Amulet is the Infiltrator's aspect. In the chest, aspect of Little Dusk. In the pants, you're using aspect of Siphoned Victuals until you get Ice in the Dark. In the gloves is the Blast Trapper's aspect. In the boots, the Exploiter's aspect. On the first ring, Toxic Alchemist aspect. On the second ring is Opportunist's aspect, which eventually gets replaced by Mother's Embrace. On the one-handed main hand weapon is the Icy Alchemist. On the off-hand is Trickster's aspect, which eventually will get replaced by the unique Condemnation Dagger. And on the two-handed weapon aspect, I would put aspect of Encircling Blades, so that it gets boosted by that 50% efficiency, 50% efficiency for amulets. Now let's show you what each of those aspects does. Speaking of Encircling Blades, there it is. Flurry damages enemies in a circle around you. So this is the 360 Flurry. And yeah, it also deals 8 to 15% multiplicative increased damage. Since it's in the two-handed weapon, that's the 100% extra efficiency. We could have put it in the amulet as well for 50%, but I decided it's more important to put this one here. So this becomes 16 to 30% rather than 8 to 15. Icy Alchemist and Toxic Alchemist. Those are important features of the build. This is the main reason why I kept the Shadow Imbuement and I didn't go for Poison, because of those lovely synergies. Also Little Dusk. So damaging a chilled or frozen enemy, again, Caltrops helps with that. With a Shadow Imbute skill, has up to 75% chance to release an explosion Reduce cold damage to the target and surrounding enemies, chilling them for 15%. While it might not be as great on bosses, it will be nice for mobbing. This one will be good on bosses as well though. Damaging a poisoned enemy with a shadow imbued skill has up to 75% chance to create a toxic explosion that applies poisoning damage over 5 seconds to the target and surrounding enemies. So bosses you would easily poison, you won't easily chill or freeze. And this one is definitely top tier, considering you can poison enemies just by spamming the poison trap. Speaking about spamming the poison trap, we have stuff like the infiltrator's aspect. Poison trap no longer breaks stealth and triggers no cooldown or arm time while you are in stealth. All poison traps activate when you exit stealth, and poison traps cooldown will be 5 to 8 seconds per trap placed. Another reason to want cooldown reduction from various places. Blast Trapper is amazing, dealing direct damage to enemies affected by your trap skills, including stuff like Caltrops has up to 30 to 50% chance to make them vulnerable for 3 seconds. And then, by the way, this one infiltrator I put in the amulet, meaning this 5 to 8 seconds becomes 2.5 to 4 seconds per trap placed with that 50%. So, opportunist, when you break concealment, you drop a cluster of stun grenades around you and around your location that explode, dealing total physical damage and stunning the enemies. Keep in mind, you won't be using this forever since it's something we eventually replace, but it's not bad to have it. And we're wondering, how do we get concealment? How do we get stealth? This way, evading through an enemy, and by evading it means the actual evade mechanic in the game. Um, Evading through an enemy infected by shadow imbuement grants stealth for 4 seconds. Breaking stealth with an attack grants you maximum life on kill for 4 seconds. So for this setup, evading becomes a crucial mechanic. It becomes something that you definitely want to be using. And it's nice. It's definitely great to know that this aspect exists, and it helps you get stealth without actually putting it on your stealth bar, so that you can have this infiltrators aspect being actually useful. The same goes for opportunist. Exploiter aspect, you do increase crowd control duration, goes nicely with the chill, and you do multiplicative increase damage to unstoppable enemies, which would be the majority of the time during boss fights if you're solo, and during world bosses as well. Shoot enemies hit. This is something that's also temporary, but it's nice. Shoot enemies hit by your grenade skills have a chance to equal to double have a chance equal to double your crit strike chance to be instantly frozen. So the more your crit chance, the better this one will be. For 2 seconds, you deal multiplicative increase critical strike damage against frozen enemies. Pretty solid. So even if you don't look at the first part, that other part is pretty nice. And the Siphon Victuals, damaging a vulnerable enemy with a core skill, has a chance to drop a healing potion. Pretty solid, and I love this one. Emerald is your top tier choice for the weapon. Crit strike damage to vulnerable enemies. It's very nice even on boss fights. When you're doing a boss fight, you won't be able to benefit much from damage to crowd controlled enemies, because unless you can reasonably stun walk an enemy, keep it crowd controlled all the time, this just won't be as good as damage to vulnerable enemies, because you can keep the vulnerable with decent build 100% of the time on an enemy, even so. Now, after Emerald and Sapphire comes something that's also great with this build, which is the ultimate skill damage for our Death Trap. But I still would prefer Emerald. And then even worse option would be Skull, Life on Kill. Not awful, but definitely not the best choice out there. The armor is Ruby and Skull. Ruby, maximum life, needless to say, it's amazing. Skull seems okay. Healing received. This build does have some healing, but I still would rather have more life overall. And for the jewelry, just get a resistance to all elements, unless certain element is so bad that it needs patching up more than resistance to all. I don't have the time right now to separate them by SWOT and by best for each SWOT, but what I do have is the time to make a list of high priority, those that you see in orange on my website, or white on the spreadsheet, and light blue is for the low priority here in gold. Needless to say, things at the top of this list are not necessarily better than things at the bottom. I'll try to make it easy by telling you about the keyword system, as I like to call it. Obviously, keywords like damage, crit strike chance, crit strike damage stand out. Other things like ranks, elites, um, close enemies, crowd-controlled enemies, vulnerable enemies, those should be keywords that stand out. Imbued skills um, stands out. Shadow, definitely something that should stand out. In terms of types of damage that you should boost is physical, shadow, poison, and even cold, but priority should go to physical, shadow, and maybe poison over cold. In terms of the categories of skills you should be boosting, would be core skills first, cutthroat, just as important as core. So those two, your top priority, because that's the majority of where the damage will be in the flurry, the invigorating strike, and here you have trap, which again, death trap would benefit from it. So would poison, so would caltrops. Subterfuge is for the poison trap. Imbuement skills, obviously for the imbue and ultimate skills, kind of lower priority. If you can get it, I don't think if it even drops, it's like damage to ultimate skills. But in general, yeah, bonuses to it definitely nice. So yeah, you can apply those keywords, damage, crit strike chance, crit strike damage, etc., ranks to those categories or to those types of damages. And then even combine them like crit strike chance with physical slash shadow slash whatever type of damage from that list against elites or just regular damage to elites of that type. Um, Ranks to a certain skill. Here it says penetrating shot code imbuement stealth. That's not the right one. It should say where did I put it? It should say Flurry, Poison Trap, Shadow Imbuement, Caltrops. I just haven't refreshed that page. So ranks to Flurry, Poison Trap, Shadow Imbuement, and Caltrops in this order and priority is what you should look for. Then there's Wiki Hit Chance with those types of damages, resistance to all elements, then damage to enemies affected by trap skills. And speaking of the traps, there is the reduce the arm time of your trap skills, which is pretty nice. But if you have that imbuement for poison trap, that won't be needed that much because it will only affect the other two. So there's damage crit chance, crit damage to vulnerable, crowd controlled, close, etc. Damage reduction after killing an elite. Overall, good stats, all of them. If you need the full list, again, go to my website. You can view this version or read that version here from my spreadsheet. For the Paragon boards, I always do those two stages. Stage 2 would be all the points spent, what you would have when you max out everything. Stage 1 would be what you would see around level 90-ish. In this case, it's level 90 if you don't have any renown from Paragon, any Paragon points from renown. But if you have the 20 Paragon points from renown, that would actually be your setup at level 85. This is what it looks like for the level 100. You can see I've taken a bunch of clusters, additionally filling up around it. This is all of the nice stats on the side that you can see with the final version, which is massive, like 188 crit strike damage with core skills, cutthroat skills 134. In general, damage to close targets 103. There's 261 damage in general. There's crit strike chance, crit strike damage, damage to elites, and many good things. But let's go bit by bit, step by step, in how I recommend filling those boards in what order. Start from here and go take these decks and take the HP and life. I always take those first. And not normally I skip this 2% life so I can focus on reaching this socket as early as possible. For this one, we decided to use the cutthroat skills bonuses called Closer or Closer. And that gives you for every 5 points of dex 9.6 increased damage, as well as if you meet the minimum requirement while wielding a melee weapon, you take 10% reduced damage. So after you take those 4 and take this, now it's time to get to those bonuses here. So you would go dex, int, dex, damage, int, damage, damage, and dex. If you don't want to get those first, you could at least get this dex and this dex, those dex nodes here, and then move upwards. It's up to you. Do you want to focus on getting this cutthroat skills damage bonus, or do you want to get the damage overall first? In either case, once you get one of them, get the other one, and then exit and connect the next board being exploit weakness. We don't want exploit weakness for exploit weakness specifically, but we want it for some of the clusters around it. And mostly, main reason is because it has a lot of intelligence in the board around the socket. And the reason is we want to get combat, the socket combat, as early as possible so we can boost our Flurry damage. So for every 5 intelligence within range, core skills deal 19.2% increased critical strike damage, which is a lovely bonus to have early on in the game. And since this requires intelligence, by the way, it also gives you skills that critically strike restore 12% of their energy cost. You want to focus on getting it that way. Go from here so you're closer to this. Later on, we are taking those bonuses. So if you go through here, it's better for your future later. Now take an entry from here, int dex. After this, you take this one. After that, you maybe want to take this 5 int and then move on to take this dex int, and then dex int. After that, you go here, potion healing int, and then damage to vulnerable. Actually, that's vulnerable damage, not damage to vulnerable. So vulnerable damage boosts the damage bonus of the vulnerable debuff. While damage to vulnerable increases the bonus damage you do to enemies affected by that debuff. And after you get that bit here, you move up here, take this strand and exit through this way. So you're closer to this damage to elites because later you will return and take it. Then next step, rushing to connect the Leirana instinct. And from Leirana's instinct, you rotate it in such a way so that you can enter from that side. And you want to enter through here where this dex is. So you go dex, damage for X seconds after dodging an attack. Then you take this. Or you can actually go dex int, willpower int. Do that way, that's better. Because this one, infusion. For every 5 intelligence purchase within range, skills that are imbued deal 14.4 increased damage. You definitely want that early as well. That's why it's on board number 2. Additional board number 2. Casting an imbuement skill reduces the active cooldown of another random imbuement skill. We don't benefit much from that one, but we benefit from the first one, obviously. And this also has 49 intelligence, and you want to take it as early as possible. After you grab this one, you put a point here. And after you do that, you put this one, dex int, and then you go strength int, dex int. And then you go 1, 2, 3 points to unlock this damage after dodging an attack, which is again why I was mentioning in the skill segment about that passive for dodge so you can stack it. And then you get this int and int. This means the way that we've taken skills, we are close to those nodes here, we are close to those later, so we can come and take them. But first, we go and connect to the Deadly Ambush. And Deadly Ambush is actually in the one board that you can just spending 5 points unlock the legendary node, so it's actually worth unlocking the legendary node. But we don't get it first, we get the sockets first, better priority. You'll be close to this here and to this one here, so you'll be able to get some nice bonuses later in this board. So you go up to here, and then you make a right turn, and then you go here. Strength, cunning, and damage reduction from trapped. Strength, boom, glyph socket, and you put turf. And turf requires strength. For every 5 strength purchase within the range, you deal damage to close enemies. And you deal you gain damage reduction against close enemies if you meet the minimum, which again you will. This board has 54 strength within range, which means yeah, once you take that socket, you want to put that point here for strength, put that point here, put that point there. Next, you want to continue getting some strength, so dex strength, dex strength. After that, you want to go here, damage to enemies affected by trap skills, damage to enemies affected by trap skills, strength. Damage to enemies affected by trap skills, dex, damage to enemies affected by trap skills, and then the last 2 remaining strength after taking this willpower and taking those. Then you go here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, take deadly ambush, and then dex, strength, exit. Later you will return for some of those nice clusters around this board. Now, the last board you want to connect is no witnesses. We rotate it in such a way so that we are close to this crit strike damage on the entry, and do it that way. And then you could later just put 1 point here and boom, you're right into the crit cluster. So you go all the way to here, and then go down, and then you enter through this way. And since this is a strength board, another strength board with 54 strength in it, exploit goes here. For every 5 strength purchase within range, you deal 7.2 increased damage to vulnerable targets. When an enemy is damaged by you, they become vulnerable for 3 seconds. This cannot happen more than once every 20 seconds per hit, per enemy hit. So you go from here, damage and intelligence, damage, strength, dex, and then this one. After that, Since you're already here, you take this strength, you take this strength. And then priority would be to go and get strength before getting some other stuff. So you could do stuff like willpower, strength, dex, strength, willpower, strength, and then dex, dex, strength, strength, strength. And after that, the last three you would take would be this life, and dex, and this strength. And at this point, you would be a level 85 rogue with the 20 points from renown, or a level 90 rogue without the points from renown. And if you remember, again, there are some differences. We didn't take some of the dex notes here. We want to return and fill in for the last remaining 5 over here, and then the 10 over there. This is what it looks like. Now you could see we've taken this one here, but I would recommend the first thing to take to be this one here, because you just need 1 point dead weight, 1 dead weight point, and then you're in the cluster already. So you put that point, you take this cluster. After that, you might want to return over here. Put that one 2 points, get this 10 dex. Put that 1 point, get this dex. Then what else is good and close by? You have 4 points here for damage and attack speed. 4 dead weight points, and boom, you're connected. Over here, 4 dead weight points, you're connected to the damage to elites and movement speed after killing an elite. 1, 2, 3, 4 dead weight points, boom, damage to injured and vulnerable damage. Lovely cluster. Another good cluster that you can connect easily, very easily, just 2 dead weight points, trap skill damage, and cooldown reduction for your traps. In fact, I would recommend taking this one after you go back to your main board, or after you grab this one, to grab this. Then on this side, 1, 2, 3 points, and immediately damage to enemies affected by trap skills and trap skill damage. Again, lovely, lovely clusters. So you're getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 clusters and filling this board. I think it's pretty solid, pretty nice bang for your buck, considering all the other stuff that we've taken and the minimum investment in terms of points to reach those clusters. To get notified when I upload more content like this one or other builds and guides for Wooter and not so Wooter games, you can subscribe to my channel and hit that bell button to not miss out on notifications. As well as keep in mind there's something called memberships on YouTube, which lets you be a paying member for my channel to get access to perks such as emotes and badges made by me, as well as the option to get one-on-one tutoring for the very basics of Adobe Photoshop, Premiere, and After Effects. And memberships can be cancelled at any time if you no longer want to be a member. Thanks for watching all the way until the end. Struck up, keep it cool until next time, and goodbye.